Okay, welcome everybody. Oh, this is loud, sorry. I'll stand back. My name's Nancy Geary. I'm the director at the New Canaan Museum and Historical Society, and we are thrilled to be partnering with the New Canaan Library on what is now the third in our series on constitutional rights. Before I begin, I want to thank Anthony Maricola, who is the manager of Adult Services and Programming, and also Lisa Oldham, who's the director of the library here, for their support of this program, their hard work, and their efforts. Tonight, we're thrilled to have two pieces to this program. The first, I am thrilled to welcome Bishop John Selders. Bishop Selders is the organizing pastor of Amistad United Church of Christ in Hartford. He's also the associate chaplain at Trinity College, and he was the executive director of Zezo House, an 18-unit housing project. He is the bishop presider of the Interdenominational Conference of Liberation Congregations and Ministries, and the co-convening bishop of the Sacred College of Progressive Episcopates. He has studied at Webster University, Eden Theological Seminary, and Anglican Divinity School. But that's not all. Bishop Selders has exhibited extraordinary commitment and dedication to a number of efforts that have afforded him the opportunity to travel across the country speaking, lecturing, and conducting workshops in the areas of race, oppression, and reproductive justice. He is a teacher, a lecturer, a workshop leader, an HIV/AIDS educator and activist with numerous citations for his work. And he also works with several organizations, both locally and nationally, whose work is ultimately concerned with the healing of humanity. After he speaks briefly, we are going to show 13th, a documentary film directed by Ava DuVernay. So welcome, and welcome, Bishop Selders.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to be quick because I want you to see the film, all right? And then why don't I hang around, and for those of you who want to, we can have some conversation after you've seen the film and had some reactions to it. Anybody seen it? Netflix? Okay, all right, so this is good. Let me start by saying thank you to Anthony and the staff. Thank you, Nancy, and all of you who braved the very interesting weather we're having here in New England these days. I'm not complaining. Not a lot of snow. I'm good. I'm good. But it's a little weird. I can just tell you. And I just kind of feel like, I don't know about you, I feel like we're going to get one. We're going to get one, and it's going to dump on us, and then we're going to say, okay, now this is New England. I'm glad to have been asked to talk about this stuff. We have, by the way, let me introduce to you my wife, my beloved, my girlfriend, my sweetie pie, my baby mama, baby's mama, Pamela Selders. And Pamela and I are the co-founders together of an organization, a statewide organization called Moral Monday Connecticut, Moral Monday CT. And you want to ask about that in some more detail later. That's a part of that resume that you didn't hear. Sometimes, you know, when people introduce you, they get stuff and they read stuff, and you're like, who are they talking about? That's not me. One of the things I'm currently involved in, and I better say it or else the Trinity people in here are going to get me. I am no longer associate college chaplain at Trinity College. I am assistant dean of students at Trinity College. And I still have some chaplaincy roles, so on Sunday I still have the collar on. And I'm in the chapel on most Sundays. And so I have an interesting role that I play in shepherding and guiding students. And it was in some of that context that Moral Monday and our work in Moral Monday has mushroomed and blossomed. We were, I guess I should tell you one more piece. I'm not a homegrown New Englander. Can't you tell? Right, because I'm starting to become one. I'm starting to, this kind of New England, I'm going to call it stank. It's New England Reserve, you know. I'm from St. Louis. Pamela and I both are from St. Louis. In fact, our children were born in St. Louis. And so August 9th, 2014 is a date for us to remember. Anybody know what that date conjures up? No fair to the people who know, who know. Anybody? August 9th, 2014, in St. Louis. Michael Brown Jr. was shot and killed by Darren Wilson, the Ferguson Police Department. Ferguson, you heard of that? Well, I grew up in the town just next door to Ferguson, the first African-American chartered town in the state of Missouri, called Kinloch. That's where my people are from. My grandmama and my granddaddy. I'm third-generation preacher, so I got the family business, in essence. And so August 9th changed our trajectory in life and work. Got a text from a buddy of ours that said, literally, ... the crib is on fire, ... Ferguson. Let me help you. I know some people here I need to translate for you. The crib, that means house or home, right? You got it? Okay, good. And I said, what you talking about, blood? You know, he said, you been watching TV? I said, well, I was a little while ago, but I cut it off because I was watching, you know, my favorite cable network at that time, and had watched 2 hours worth of the news I was going to pay attention to, and turned it off and do what most preachers do on a Saturday morning, early afternoon. We got to study and get ourselves together for Sunday's work. And so I was doing that, and obviously turned the TV back on to see the images coming out of my hometown, our hometown, that you saw. Armed tanks, militarized police, and all that began to unfold. What we now know and what we grew up with was the really crazy way 2/3 of the budget of Ferguson was raised by people being stopped by the police on, I'm going to call jacked up or less consequential ways. Tail light out, headlight out, get a ticket. You forget that you got the ticket. You get fines and fees, and ultimately a bench warrant is issued, and young men and women get into the criminal injustice system. And I'm going to call it that. You'll see why in a minute. Very interesting state of affairs that we watched mirrored in front of our eyes. That was the backdrop of what happened in Ferguson. And you'll see a little bit, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. But at that moment, my mother-in-law called, may she rest in peace. You know, she asked Pamela, y'all coming home? And my mom called, are you coming home? We started getting phone calls from family members. I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law who lived in Ferguson. I have nieces and nephews who lived in Ferguson. It was home. And so the end of that summer and the first of the winter, the fall and winter of 2014 into 2015, we were back and forth from here to Ferguson and St. Louis. We were at the head of we were in the storm at the front of social justice movement and the movement for Black Lives. And so it was in that time period that a conversation back here led to the beginnings of what we now call Moral Monday, Connecticut. All right? And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you need to know that because that connects us to this piece. And you're going to see this in this movie, but I wanted to make sure. Anybody know what happened in history between 1860 and 1865 in this country? Anybody know what happened? What happened? What happened? What was the war fought about? What was the core? Okay, we can, that's what we know. That's what we've been taught. You know, the paragraph and a half you get in the history books in 7th grade and 4th grade, 5th grade, whenever you do that history, U.S. history, I think it's 7th grade, junior high, you get a little bit of a blur. We talk about slavery was the reason why. I would contend while slavery was a piece, we had states' rights at the bottom end of that. and the balance of power between the North and the South, and who made money and who was going to make all the money and who was going to get none of the money. I would contend we had more of a problem with that than actually slavery. Slavery was an entree into that conversation, but that's an argument for a different day. What we are coming out of the Civil War, we got this 13th Amendment. It's ratified ultimately in December 1865, and it said, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. The exception that allows servitude as punishment for a crime allows prisons to use inmate labor. I just want you for most of us who've never read any amendment, you hear all these arguments, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment. If we would be honest, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. Have you read any amendment? I mean, some people are, and I know. Yeah, high school back in the day, but we don't. This is the 14th Amendment. The 13th, I'm sorry, because the 14th is a different one. Within 5 years, we ratified 3 amendments. The 13th, the 14th Amendment, which is the amendment that gives us equal protection under the law, all right? And then the 15th Amendment that gave African-American men, let me just be clear, it was supposed to be for women, but you know, as you women know, women didn't have the right to vote in this country then either, all right? The African-American men, the right to vote. I just want to sit with that for just a second. Let me talk just a little bit. You'll see this mirrored. I'm going to go all the way down. I got a lot to say, but I ain't going to say it all tonight. These statistics are based on the Prison Policy Initiative here in Connecticut. We have probably somewhere between 14 and 15,000 plus prisoners in the state of Connecticut, incarcerated in the state of Connecticut. The vast majority of those prisoners are in state prisons, not just here in the state of Connecticut. We farm out our prisoners to other prisons. Did you all know that? Yeah. So there are independent private organizations and companies that actually house some of our prisoners. And in those privately owned prisons, they are working, building widgets of all sorts at the slave wage of $1 and something per hour. And I said it just like I meant to say it. I'm gonna keep going. You're gonna hear a lot about this from the national perspective. I just wanted to make it more personal here in Connecticut. From 1978 through 2015, which is what 2014, this trajectory tracks the rise of prisons and prisoners and the rate of incarceration. The numbers really don't matter. It's the drastic climb that does. We went from less than 150,000 total prisoners in the state of Connecticut to over 600,000 prisoners in a 15, 16-year period. Over the last 40 years, I'm sorry, let me get my dates and times right, over the last 40 years. In particular, the last 15, 16 years, there's been a drastic shift. Let me also, just so you know, not only do we have those who are in prison, we got those who are on parole, we got those who are in the probation system. See those numbers? numbers we don't think about. But they track the rise of mass incarceration in this country. Let me say a couple of more words and then I'm gonna move to the film. Anybody know why? What happened? Not just yet. Okay, great. People can see it. That's good. That's good. People can see the slide. Anybody know why we had this sudden uptick?
War on drugs.
Okay. Anybody else got any thought about it? Yes, ma'am. Anybody else? Anybody know why? Anybody thought about it? You're here, so somehow this is of some interest to you. So why?
Increase in poverty. Racism.
Okay. No answer that has been used is wrong. None of it is wrong. I would suggest to you, can I read something to you? Let me find. Had an interesting guy have something to say. Anybody remember John Ehrlichman? Yeah. John Ehrlichman. Who was John Ehrlichman? Let me get off of this just with Nixon White House, 1968 was the campaign that elected Richard Milhous Nixon to the presidency of the United States. Anybody remember who he ran against? It was Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey. McGovern was 72. All right. So we got our history. You got where we are, right? Well, John Ehrlichman in 2016 in an interview let the beans out the bag of what part of the Nixon campaign was actually about. Let me read this to you. You want to know what this really was all about? He asked with the bluntness of a man who, after public disgrace and a stench in federal prison, had little left to protect. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or blacks, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and then criminalize both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Coupled with that, COINTELPRO. Anybody know what COINTELPRO was? It's short for the Counterintelligence Program that was developed during the Eisenhower administration under your friend and mine, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI for 100 million years, it seemed. It was the precursor to what we now call the Patriot Act and other such things, where counterintelligence, surveillance, and other interesting tools were being used, targeted at Americans, embedded in organizations like the Black Panthers. Some of y'all might remember the Weathermen, and others, Bill Ayers. We could talk about what COINTELPRO actually meant to folk. But I want to couple that with, lastly, you're right, the war on drugs, this tough on crime that leads to mass incarceration. I'm going to let you watch the film. I just wanted to wet your whistle a bit where we're headed. Okay,